Does it ever reach your mind to ask, what is human trafficking? Is human trafficking the same thing as smuggling? Is human trafficking the same thing as sex trafficking? What if a trafficked person consents? If it does reach your mind, keep on listening because in this episode, I will discuss how human trafficking in the Philippines is a rising social issue, what causes it and its effects, and what are the possible measures we can do to solve this issue. Welcome to Social Measures Podcast Session. I'm your host, Merylle Marquez, and this is the place to tackle issues in the Philippines. Here in Social Measures Podcast Session, you're able to listen to different issues in the Philippines, its cause and effect, and measures to solve these issues. Regarding with the questions I have mentioned earlier, what is human trafficking? Well, human trafficking occurs when someone is compelled into service. Individuals may be compelled through force, fraud, coercion, or because of their age. Traffickers often target individuals based on their vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities like their age, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, culture, immigration status, housing instability. However, anyone can become a victim of human trafficking. And to the question, is human trafficking the same thing as smuggling? Well, human trafficking and smuggling are not the same. Human trafficking is exploitation based and does not place to another. An individual can live and be trafficked in the same neighborhood. Smuggling refers to illegally transporting and moving individual transnationally. And for our third question, is sex trafficking the same thing as human trafficking? Well, sex trafficking is one form of human trafficking. There are many forms of human trafficking, can include sex trafficking, labor trafficking, in both forced labor and domestic servitude, organ trafficking, forced marriage, exploitation of children for labor, sex, and warfare. And to our fourth question, um, does consent, what if a trafficked person consent? While consent does not legalize exploitation, traffickers often target vulnerable individuals who consent to jobs. Others who are less vulnerable would not. Let me give you a brief background of human trafficking. Human trafficking is a rising social issue in the Philippines since that Philippines is undoubtedly a source country for human trafficking, with its citizens being trafficked in different parts of the world, mainly owing to the socio-economic conditions prevailing in different parts of the country. In recent years, climate change has affected the stability of Filipino lives and is creating opportunities for human traffickers to exploit. Across the country, many women and children have been forced into sex and labor work or felt that entering such work was their only option. And now we call modern day slavery as human trafficking. While human trafficking, this is a global problem with broad reach that is often under-recognized in some countries. The International Labour Organization estimates that 25 million individuals around the world are victims of modern slavery in the form of forced labor and sex trafficking. Now, what causes human trafficking? Well, mass displacement, conflict, extreme poverty, lack of access to education and job opportunities, violence, and harmful social norms like child marriage, demand for cheap labor, political conditions, social and cultural practices, search for better life, unfortunate circumstances, unfamiliarity, and huge profit generated in human trafficking are all factors that drives individuals into situations of trafficking. Now, traffickers are trained to identify vulnerability and use expert manipulation tactics to persuade and control their victims. They identify a void and offer to fill it. Now, knowing the effects of these is usually uncontrollable. The types of physical and psychological abuse human trafficking victims experience often leads to serious mental or emotional health consequences, including feeling of severe guilt, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, substance abuse, either alcohol or narcotics, and eating disorder, trauma bonds and attachment issues, Stockholm syndrome, exhaustion, constant fatigue, self harm, isolating behavior, self blame, and even suicidal ideation comes to their minds because of these traumatic experiences. And in an effort to deal with this rising social issue in the Philippines passed Republic Act 9208, the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2003, a penal law against human trafficking, sex tourism, sex slavery, and child prostitution. To stop human trafficking, the government increased its effort to prevent trafficking. The IACAT, Interagency Council Against Trafficking, which the Secretaries of Department of Justice, DOJ, and DSWD, Department of Social Welfare and Development, chaired and included three NGOs or non-governmental organization members, and the government task forces involved and anti-trafficking activities met regularly during the reporting period to share information and coordinate policies. The RA 9208, or the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2003, as amended by RA or Republic Act 10364, also known as the Extended Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2012. 9208 is an act to institute policies to eliminate trafficking in persons, especially women and children, establishing the necessary institutional mechanisms for the protection and support of trafficked persons, providing penalties for its violation and for other purposes. With regards to the provided penalties for its violations, use of trafficked persons for prostitution shall be penalized with imprisonment ranging from 6 years to 40 years and a fine ranging from 50,000 to 5 million pesos. What are the possible measures that we can do to eliminate human trafficking? First, increase the rate of convictions through monitoring of cases, supporting victim witnesses, and provide administrative assistance to law enforcement and prosecutors. Intensifying efforts is to prevent or minimize trafficking related corruption cases. Increasing effort to prevent incidents of TIP or trafficking in persons. We can also help prevent human trafficking through enacting training and awareness programs. Continually monitoring trafficking risks requires supplier to certify compliance, providing helpline to report trafficking, and examining order placements practices. Volunteer and support anti-trafficking efforts in your community. Meet with and or write to your local, state, federal elected officials to let them know you care about combating human trafficking and ask what they are doing to address it. Be well informed. We can also help the survivors of human trafficking by donating funds, products, and services to agencies that works directly with survivors of human trafficking. The saying, "it does takes a village to raise a child," can also be applied in helping cases of trafficking survivors. Here are 7 ways that you can do to help end trafficking. First, know the signs, learn the red flags and indicators of trafficking. Search about trafficking with facts. Second, report a tip. Contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline on your community, or if you have any concerns about a potential trafficking situation, you can also email them. Third, spread the word. Share awareness resources in your community. Let everyone know that the National Human Trafficking Hotline is there to help. Fourth, volunteer locally. Ask anti-trafficking organizations in your community how you can support them. Perhaps they need volunteers or you could help with an awareness event. Fifth, stay informed. Sign up for Department of Justice Human Trafficking News Alerts. Follow relevant organizations on social media. Read reports as they are released or check out newsfeed. Sixth, use your skills. Promote anti-trafficking protocols by your field of profession. Whether you're a teacher or you work in school community, whether you are an attorney, lawyer, media, a doctor, or an employee. And lastly, raise your voice. Ask representatives how they are addressing human trafficking. Let them know what your community needs. Thank you for listening to Social Measures podcast session. Once again, I'm your host, John Merylle Marquez, and this is the place to tackle issues in the Philippines. Here in Social Measures podcast session, you are able to listen to different issues in the Philippines, its cause and effect, and measures to solve these issues. Thank you.